are good to go.
We're ready to get started?
We are. It's all yours. I'm going to put it on speaker view and we're good to go. All right.
All right. Okay, welcome and thank you so much everyone for joining us tonight. I'm Kaya Hagler. I'm a birth doula and massage therapist, and I'm so excited to introduce Candice. Candice is a health and mindfulness coach, herbalist, and fermentationist. She writes articles, offers classes and workshops, and coaches others about using plants for healing and exploring spiritual and emotional health. She is a cook, a medicine maker, a gardener, and a mom of a beautiful 7-year-old. She inspires healthy living using nutrition, plants, self-care, stress management, and a healthy mindset, and supports other moms on their healthy journeys, helping to inspire them in the kitchen with healthy meals and to prioritize their self-care while juggling the demands of the family. She also addresses digestion, hormone balancing, metabolism, microbiome health, stress, reprogramming emotions, inflammation, detoxing, and more. I'm so excited to hear Candice's presentation tonight. Let's get started.
Thank you. Let's see. Is my screen? Oh, I should share my screen. Well, thank you everyone for joining us on your evening. We know it's kind of the evening time and family time, so we really appreciate you coming and attending our presentation today. So let me go ahead and clear some of this stuff out. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. Today we're going to be talking about how to get picky eaters to eat more fruits and vegetables. And this to me is a really fun experience because we can have a lot of fun with food. And I've noticed that when we bring more fun and joy into the kitchen and into our meals and our eating, we can encourage children to be more open and receptive to trying new things. So I just find this topic to be lots of fun and very exciting and joyous because it's a wonderful process. And it's a good positive way of taking something that can be very frustrating into something that can be fun and exciting for the family. So why are eating more fruits and vegetables important? Well, we need phytonutrients, and it's now pretty much well known that we are not vitamin deficient, we are whole food deficient. We are deficient in phytonutrients and nutrition from whole foods, from plants. The American diet is not very focused around plants, unfortunately, and so I want to just bring some more information to you guys as to how we can increase the amount of plants we're bringing into our diet. We should be having anywhere between 7 and 13 servings of whole fruits and vegetables, and I like to think more on the higher side, to be honest. These whole foods, fruits and vegetables, can be fresh, cooked, frozen, or preserved, which is usually canned or fermented. Ideally, we want a good combination of raw and cooked vegetables. You know, there is a big movement with the raw food diet, and I do find with fruits in particular, I like to focus fruits on being more raw, but I do want to highlight that there are a lot of phytonutrients that are more bioavailable if they're gently cooked. So my rule of thumb in the kitchen is use a combination of raw and cooked vegetables. Summertime, when we have more produce, I focus more on raw. And in wintertime, when we're cooking more foods, I kind of focus more on cooked. So one theme that you're going to kind of notice throughout my presentation is how we adapt to the seasons. I like to encourage everyone to work with a rainbow daily, or at least weekly, if we can't strive for that daily. And increase diversity, working with different varieties of our fruits and vegetables. So let's take a look at this visual here. Why do we want to focus on a rainbow? Well, even though all foods are going to have many of the same benefits within all these colors, each color kind of hones in and has a very specific focus. So red tends to be very helpful for heart. You know, we associate the color red with heart health. But one thing I like to add to this is that red foods tend to be very high in pectin, which is good for gut healing and our microbiome health. Microbiome is a term that we use to describe the beneficial flora in our gut, as well as the cell, the living environment it resides in. So we won't have healthy flora if we don't have healthy cells to house them, to host them. So the microbiome is the term that includes both the flora and our cellular structure, the integrity of our cells that the flora resides in. So the red colors in particular are very helpful for that. We have orange and yellows that are good for promoting healthy eyes and skin. They're also very anti-inflammatory. Greens are very good for promoting digestion and immune health, but they're also great for cleansing, and they're good for detoxing by supporting our liver and kidneys. The purples and blues are very rich in antioxidants, and they're known for helping to strengthen our cells. So I don't really like this word anti-aging so much, because it's more of just improving our cells so our cells are healthy and young. And these colors are also very anti-inflammatory. The white is really helpful for digestion, and white foods tend to have a property called inulin, which is a prebiotic. It helps to feed the flora. So not only are probiotics helpful, but we could take all the probiotics in the world, but if we're not feeding them with prebiotics, with these wonderful whole foods that bacteria eat, then the probiotics we take could be pointless, and we're not really nourishing a healthy flora. So if we want to support a healthy microbiome and healthy cells, we need this whole spectrum of the rainbow, and as often as we can. And we really need to focus on prebiotic foods, and really all these foods are prebiotics. It's just the white foods have inulin, which is a really important food for the flora. I want to highlight that processed and packaged foods with fruit syrups, flavoring, artificial coloring, high fructose corn syrup, added sugar, and other artificial sweeteners should be avoided, or at least very limited. Big part of our American diet is based on convenience. And when we work with convenience and packaged foods, unfortunately, a lot of them come with these added ingredients. And these added ingredients are what are basically destroying our metabolism and our taste receptors too. So the more we minimize these, the more we support healthy food cravings and a healthy diet for our family. So why whole foods and why seasonal diversity? Well, whole foods, especially fruits and vegetables, tend to be very alkalinizing. And when we eat more alkalinizing food, we support a healthy pH, which means we support healthy cells. When we have an acidic pH, this really depletes the mineral reserves, because our pH is our buffering system in the body. So if we're eating a lot of acidic foods that come in the form of processed foods, or we're eating a lot of sugar and things like that, basically our bodies have to pull the minerals from our muscles and from our bones to buffer our pH, because if our pH gets out of the range, basically our bodies stop functioning. So the underlying function of our bodies are to maintain a healthy pH. So the more alkalinizing food we put into our body, the less we are depleting the important minerals from our muscles and our bones. And I think this is so important for our children, because our children are growing. So they need all the minerals they can possibly get. And we don't want to be giving them foods that are depleting these minerals, because then they're going to be growing up with less bone density and weak muscles. And then there's also a stress response that gets affected when we deplete our minerals. When we deplete our minerals, this actually really does affect our nervous system. So we're more likely to feel stressed and have a more stressful reaction to our environment. When we balance all the nutrients that we need to support our cells, we also support detoxing, cleansing, we support our brain and heart health, digestion, and more. And we all want this for our children, right? We want healthy behavior, mood, mind, and body. And all this stems from an alkaline pH. And this is why fruits and vegetables are so important. Now, what about diversity? Why is we talking so much about diversity? And why is this like the new little term that we're hearing when we talk about food? And it's because it's believed that humans used to eat over 600 different plants a year. But you know, now when I ask families, well, can you even get 100 different plants in your diet a year? And 3 out of 4 times I get a no. So I like to encourage people, let's just start with 100. Let's see if we can get 100 different foods over the course of a year into our bodies and into our children's bodies. And after the presentation, I hope you'll be inspired to know that this is going to be a little bit more attainable than what you think. When we use the phytonutrients, we are supporting our healthy microbiome. And this is very important because this is how we affect the expression of our DNA. And, you know, we can't change the DNA we give our children, but what we can do is support a healthy expression of their DNA. So any bad genes that they may have acquired from our lineage stay off, and all the good healthy genes that we pass on to them stay on. This is probably one of the best things that we can do for our children. Now, I'm going to encourage you guys to go against the corporate grain. That's what I kind of call it. And explore a new food pyramid. Many of us have been raised with this older mentality, and unfortunately, I don't want to get political, but unfortunately our food is political, and it has been heavily influenced by lobbyists and the corporations. So let's just X out this old paradigm that we've been taught, and let's switch to the pie charts. And let's think about half of the volume of food in our diets being fruits and vegetables. And then looking at a quarter of our diet being whole grains, beans, lentils, and other plant-based foods. And then 25%, although I would even say even a little less, to be honest. I would even make this a little smaller and this one a little bit bigger. And this is going to be your healthy fats. I would actually replace some of these images with more plant-based healthy fats personally. A little meat, of course, is fine, but really we should be focusing more and more on plant sources of protein and healthy fats. Some considerations I'd like you guys to think about are genetics. Well, I work with a lot of people, and it's amazing when you hear about all these diet fads and you're like, well, some people can eat grains, other people can't. Some people can eat beans and other people can't. Well, what is right for you? Some people can have brassicas and others can't. So it's just, there's no one diet for anyone, of course. And even within our families, we may find some of our kids like some foods and others are reacting or have allergies or sensitivities to others. So we always want to look at everyone as an individual. And I always like to come back to genetics. What did our ancestors eat? So if I am working with someone who has, who comes from an Asian descent, I'm not going to tell them to eat a raw salad because their bodies cannot digest raw salads. That's not part of their microbiome. That's not part of their heritage of how they eat. They're going to do more with stir fries and cooked foods and vegetables. So that's just one example. If you have Italian descent, you're going to be doing really great with the Mediterranean diet and pastas and sauces. Whereas someone from Northern European may not do well with pastas and do better with potatoes. So you kind of see where I'm going with this. Look at what your ancestral heritage is and apply that into your diet. Eat what your ancestors ate, because that is what is going to be easier for your digestion to handle. Look at ancient and heirloom varieties, and then of course fermented foods. And I can't talk much about fermented foods because that would literally be a whole nother presentation in itself, but I want to highlight that you can get fermented foods in each of these categories. And so I encourage you to explore fermented foods. Let's look at, since we're going to be focusing mostly on fruits and vegetables today, let's look at different categories of fruit. And, you know, of course, there's some overlap here and things like that. I'm not going to go over all of them, but I just want to highlight that I try to make sure I hit all these categories every week, if not every day when I can. So tropical fruit and, of course, citrus fruits are kind of combined into the tropical fruit. We have our orchard fruit, which grows on trees. We have our berries, which are more of your vineyards and shrubby fruit plants, and then of course melons. One thing I do want to mention quickly about melons are melons combine well with other fruits, of course, but you don't want to combine melons with other types of food. So you don't really want to combine these with proteins and fats. You want to keep them an hour away from these other food groups. Categories of vegetables. We have your brassica family and your Apiaceae family. This is your carrot family. I make sure to eat both of these food groups every single day. It is so important. And of course, there's so many different families of vegetables, but these two I think are so important that needs to be consumed every day. We have, I just put a miscellaneous category here of lots of other vegetables, leafy greens and wild edibles, and of course your high resistant starches. Let me highlight a couple of things real quick about high resistant starches. There's some cool studies that show if you take potatoes and you fry them and turn them into potato chips, they are very low resistant with starches, which means that it takes a lot of energy for your body to process it, and it has a spike with your blood sugar. However, if you take potatoes and you boil them and you let them cool, they become a high resistant starch, which means the starches convert very slowly in the body and they help regulate your blood sugar. So this goes to show that, especially with starchy foods, because there's a lot of negative opinions about starches, it really has to do with the preparation. So, you know, working with your high resistance starches or your foods that are prepared in a form that is more high resistant is going to be way better than having them be processed and fried. If you do work with any wild edibles, I'm a huge fan of just eating your weeds. So when you're weeding your garden, saving those edible weeds and turning that into your meals. But be sure to properly identify your wild edibles and your garden weeds. You don't want to mistake any of these weeds for foods that you should not be eating. I would have loved to focus a little bit more on flowers too, but we're focusing on fruits and vegetables, but I want to highlight real quick, since we're talking about edibles from your yards, grow some edible flowers. Your children will so love it and appreciate it, and it's so much fun, and it brings the rainbow into your diet when you're sprinkling edible flowers into your food. And you'll notice your kids out there just grazing on the flowers and eating them, and I think that's a beautiful thing to teach your children. So what if we have picky eaters? How do we get them to eat these foods? Well, let's talk about this with our children. Let's educate our children about how food interacts in our body. Let's change the emotional and the mental mindset behind the way our children look at food. Did you know that our food cravings come from the microbes inside our gut? I think this is so important to teach our children. If our children realize that our food cravings don't even come from ourselves, like our bodies, that they're actually coming from the beneficial flora in our bodies, and when we have imbalances in that flora, that can make us, you know, crave more breads and cheese and sugars. But when we have a healthy amount of bacteria in our bodies, the good flora, you know, we actually crave the fruits and vegetables, because the flora in our gut are going to send messages to our brain for us to feed them what they want to feed, what they want to be fed. So when we have healthy flora, we crave fruits and vegetables. When we have unhealthy flora, we don't. So just talking to our children about this and teaching them that the flora in our bodies are what keep our bodies healthy and our minds healthy and our emotions healthy is a good way of getting our kids to start thinking differently about food and a way our bodies function. Smelling and seeing food is actually the first stage of digestion, followed by taste. And this is why I think it's so important for us to be growing our food and encouraging our kids to help us in the kitchen. Because when they're seeing the food, when they're handling it, when they're smelling it, and their eyes are looking at and observing it, we're already starting to send messages between our mind brain and our gut brain. And we're starting to restore our metabolic programming. It just takes a little bit of time. You know, this isn't going to just switch overnight, right? But the more that we do this, the more we're reprogramming these messages in the way the brain and the gut connect and communicate. And then we want to encourage our kids connecting to the plants with their senses and talk about the benefits of the rainbow. So this is one thing I always do at the dinner table is when we're eating, we're like, look at the colors on our plates. You know, what colors do you see and how do those colors make you feel? And then we talk about the benefits of the colors. I also like to play fun food fact games while we're eating. So we're always sharing fun things that we learn about food. And so every week we might choose a different vegetable. We might look into it, watch a little fun 5-minute YouTube video about it. And then we talk about it at the dinner table. We talk about that food. We talk about what we learned. Practice mindful eating. And then, of course, this is a little deeper, but this is what I do when I'm coaching people is if a lot of these other things aren't working, then I start to address the emotional component to their food choices. But oftentimes when you just start playing around with food and you have this joyous and exciting attitude behind your food, that often enough is enough to change that emotional component, especially in our children. The earlier we start, the better. So if we can eat healthy during pregnancy and lactation, that is a good start. But oftentimes, we're not aware during that and we're learning after the fact, which is okay. But then we want to just make sure we're living by example. So our kids will eat what they see us eating, right? It may take a little time, but they will. And kids also will not starve. They will eat what's around them. So I think this is really important because we're the ones providing the food. So we're doing the shopping. If we're going and we're buying a bunch of processed foods and that's sitting in the cupboard, of course our kids are going to eat it. They see it. But if we just stop buying these foods and we stock up the fridge and the cupboards with whole foods, and that's what they're going to eat. Though they may skip some meals. I've had my son skip a couple meals, but you know what? He'll get hungry enough to eat it. So they definitely will not starve. When making changes, less is more, especially in the beginning. So take everything one step at a time. I'm going to give you guys lots of different recommendations and ideas. Don't get overwhelmed. Take one step at a time. I aim for one new food each week or one new change each week. One change a week is a simple thing that we can all do. And if we miss a week, that's fine. So think about it. If you tried one new food, or if your child tried one new food each week, let's say you missed a few weeks, but over the course of a year, that can be anywhere between 40 and 50 new fruits and vegetables or whole foods that your child can end up exploring over the course of a year. You want to try to at least start limiting excessively salty and sweet foods, because this really does affect our taste receptors, especially foods with high fructose corn syrup, artificial sweeteners, and additives. Quality matters. A little sugar is fine, a little salt is fine, but the quality of the salt and sugar really does matter. You want to try to sneak in the vegetables at first. This is what starts to help metabolic reprogramming. And then you can always increase slowly more and more over the course of the weeks and the months. There's a concept that I wasn't so keen on at first because I'm not a fan of spitting or encouraging my kid to spit food out, but I did try this with fermented foods because I had learned when I became a certified fermentationist, I learned that a good way to get your children to eat fermented foods is to get them to just try just the tiniest little bite, or even just a couple little drops of the salty brine of the ferment. And if you can get that to just sit on the tongue for like 3 or 4 seconds, they can swallow it, or if they really don't like it at first, just tell them to go spit it out. But what ends up happening is just that little bit of ferment touching the tongue begins to send signals to the brain, which then sends signals to the gut. And then you start to actually change your metabolic reprogramming. So then you're sending signals down into the beneficial flora. So over the course of a few weeks, if you do that every day for a few weeks, all of a sudden you'll notice your kid not spitting it out anymore, and they're swallowing and they're like, Mom, that's actually pretty good. And then you can start to have more ferments around, and then you'll notice your kids going into the fridge and opening up the jar of ferment and snacking on fermented carrots and fermented pickles and kraut and things like that, because they're slowly changing the microbiome and they're slowly changing their taste receptors and metabolic reprogramming. It's really amazing. It's so fun. I will have to say it took my son about 4 to 5 weeks, maybe almost 6 weeks before he was actually swallowing these ferments, but he eats a forkful of ferments every day. And then at the end, I'm going to highlight a way you can bridge the gap with your food, with food in a capsule or the complete shake mix from Juice Plus. And to me, this is a huge step that can really help support your metabolic reprogramming. So remember, take steps. There's all these wonderful proverbs that say, in order to get to the top of the mountain, you have to take your first step, or just take one step at a time. And you can see, even children can climb a mountain. So even children can make these changes one step at a time. Each step accumulates. Make food and eating and cooking fun. Children love fun. So if you're making it fun, they're going to totally embrace it. Work within the meals you know. This is always my first step. I don't like to intimidate people by having to get them to try too many new things at once. So take the current meals that you're already making and then add in your nutrition. And then from there, you can slowly start to change your entire meal, start really exploring whole new different meals that you've never tried before. But first, start with what you already know. Make it easy for yourself. And you want to start to increase the nutrients by adding small amounts of whole foods into the meals you're already making. And also begin spicing up your meals. Start with the mild spices such as cinnamon, parsley, and thyme for your children. And then over time, you can start to introduce more spices over time. I do this thing where I leave little jars of spices on my table, or little condiments and hot sauces and things like that. And when we sit down and eat, we're all responsible for seasoning our food. And so my son will go grab the jars and he'll shake the seasonings and the parsley and nettle leaves and things like that right into his food. And that's just, it's so wonderful when you allow your kids to have that control and that inspiration on their own. Sauce up your meals. This is one of my favorite things because most kids do like sauces. I mean, there are kids out there who don't like sauces and condiments, but a lot of children do. So you can always like sneak in some little bit of grated vegetable or flakes or things like that, and sneak things into the condiments. Or you can encourage your kids to eat bites of their vegetables that they don't like, dipped in a sauce or a condiment, because then they're going to be more likely to eat it. Always include something your children does like to eat on their plates. And I always encourage my son to take a bite of the vegetable he doesn't like with a bite of something he does like. So he loves mashed potatoes. He hates broccoli. So I tell him, hey, take that bite of broccoli and dip it in your mashed potatoes and then eat it and focus on the mashed potato flavor, and he'll eat that broccoli. And then after time, you start to begin gradually removing and reducing your unhealthy ingredients and explore just one substitution at a time. And then one thing I do like to encourage families when they're ready is to start exploring 1 to 2 new healthy recipes every week. And when we do have some really amazing free cookbooks as ebook downloads. So if you're interested in exploring some new healthy recipes, please contact the person who invited you and we can connect you to these cookbooks. And of course, be patient and compassionate. It does take some time for metabolic reprogramming to take effect. So the more patient and compassionate we are in the process, the better it's all going to be. So how do we increase more whole fruit into our meals? I like to work with fruit salads and platters and trays. I like to add whole fruits into our breakfast cereals and our oatmeal. My son loves yogurt and granola, and I do a little side of fruit with him. Oh, let me plug in my computer. Apologize. Okay. And then make your own fruit syrups and preserves and use less sugar. A lot of the stuff in the stores, they have so much sugar in it to help preserve it and make it very shelf stable, but it is just way too much in my opinion. Most recipes you can explore and like cut the sugar in half, and it's still super sweet and delicious, and we are supporting healthier metabolism. Smoothies, frozen fruits, or frozen yogurt. So here's a picture of me and my son making elderberry frozen yogurt. So I make homemade yogurt, added some elderberry syrup in it, which also has some other wonderful nourishing goods in there. I have some blueberries and raspberries and dates. We pureed it up, froze it up, and there we go. Ta-da! Frozen yogurt without any sugar. It has all fruits in it to sweeten it. This is a rosehip seed jam that is so easy to make, and it's sugar-free because you can make it with honey. And this is on my website if you want to get that recipe. And smoothies, so many different ways to make smoothies, but one thing I want to highlight is when you add juice to a smoothie, like fruit juice, it ends up being just way too much sugar. So I like to often use nut milk. So I make cashew milk, and then, you know, I toss in with some fruits. I make a little nourishing herbal tea, and then I use that as a substitute for the liquid. I have chia seeds and cinnamon, a little ginger, and some rosehip jam, and ta-da! I have a delicious smoothie that required no juice, and it's rich in vitamin C. It has protein and all the wonderful things to help slow this conversion of sugar. And that's one thing I do want to highlight, that, you know, one wonderful thing about whole foods is that they have everything we need to digest them. So a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables also have the protein and the fiber to help slow the conversion of carbohydrates in the body. Carbohydrates are not bad, especially if they come in the whole plant form. We need the adequate levels of plant-based protein and fiber to help regulate how those carbohydrates affect our metabolism. Okay, so a lot of kids love gummies and fruit roll-ups. So I want to encourage you guys to once a month do a fun project with the kids where you sit down and you make them yourself. And so I do that with my son. So here, instead of working with fruit syrups and artificial colors and flavors, you know, I'm working with a little bit of ginger bug. I have calendula flowers, borage flowers. So these are two wonderful, delicious, edible flowers that children love. I have some rose hips, which are the hips from rose plants. So it's a rose berry, basically. I have elderberries, I have lemon balm, and nettle. So nourishing, wonderful. Did you guys know that nettle is like considered the most densely nutritious plants that grows on land? It even has more nutrients than spinach. Yes, it stings, but you can cook that sting out, you can freeze it out, and you can dry it too, and it has less sting when it's dried. But I take the nettles and I just make all this into a delicious, very strong tea. I add in a little bit of juice. I add in my high quality gelatin because I want to make sure I'm supporting healthy animals. And then you pour them into molds and ta-da, you make your own gummies. They last for about 3 weeks in the fridge. So you can sit there and make this about once a week or every 3 weeks with your kids. And then you don't have to rely on these horrible gummies that you buy in the stores. So let's talk a little bit more about vegetables now. So we have, how can we increase more whole leafy greens in our salads? You want to begin with small amounts and gradually increase. I think this is key because kids are going to get so intimidated if you just give them a huge plate of greens or a huge plate of lots of vegetables. So, you know, always begin with small amounts and gradually increase. I like to dice, chop, and puree my greens. When you start cooking them, they pretty much disintegrate into almost nothing. You can put handfuls and handfuls of greens into your sauteing pan, and then by the time it cooks down, there's not very much left. So remembering that when you prepare them into smaller sizes, it's going to be more receptive to your children. And then explore different ways of preparing them. There's some vegetables my kid loves to eat raw. There's some he loves to eat steamed. There's some he likes to be sauteed in a little oil. And there's some that he likes to be baked. So just exploring different ways of preparing your vegetables and see what your children respond to the most. And then, of course, using your sauces, spices, marinades, and condiments to make them taste a little bit better. I love sneaking greens into a smoothie. And I always offer a green with a savory meal. My newest favorite, though, is microgreens. And it really dawned on me because my kid does not always eat greens, but he'll be out there grazing on these microgreens. And it made me think, my kid likes tiny things. He's small. You give a child a huge collard leaf or a huge leaf of chard or kale, they might be a little intimidated by it. But you show them a little tray of microgreens, they're going to think they're cute and they're more likely to try them and graze on them. And then I like to sprinkle in dried greens like nettle, dandelion leaf, parsley, and seaweed. Seaweeds are your vegetables of the sea. And I include this in almost every single savory meal. Oh, I did not list popcorn, but that's a good one. If you make popcorn for your kids, sprinkle in some parsley or a little dulse, a little seaweed, sprinkle in. I put nettle in every single batch of popcorn I make. And that way, I'm not just eating popcorn and butter, or, you know, sometimes I add nutritional yeast and things like that, but I'm getting more nutrition into these basic meals that we all kind of love and enjoy, right? So I'm adding them into every time I make beans, lentils, rice, grains, oatmeal, eggs, potato dishes, stir fries, soups, salads, even baked muffins. My kid has no idea how many vegetables he eats when I make him a baked muffin. It's amazing. So fresh roots and tubers. I think that roots are very depleted in our diet, especially our children. Children tend to like carrots, but they don't really tend to explore too many roots outside of that. So I love to grate. That's my thing about vegetables. Any vegetable that my kid does, or roots in particular, so any roots that my kid loves, like carrots, I leave in larger pieces, bite-sized pieces. But the turnips, the parsnip, the burdock root, these roots that just have more earthy flavors to them, I grate them. I just get my grater out and I grate them right into my food when it's cooking. You don't even know what's in there. It's really great. I sneak root vegetables into stir fries, rice, beans, lentils, hash browns, country potatoes, mashed potatoes, and yams, meat, sauces, soups, stews, muffins, and so on. So here are some pictures of some meals that I cook. Focused around on vegetables. So here's these, I actually made this week, country potatoes, and I took leftover green beans from the night before. I have some peppers in here. I grated in some turnip and some parsnip and some burdock root. So here, something just as simple as country potatoes, that would just be a potato and maybe some seasonings, has 4 to 5 different vegetables in it, and has some nettle sprinkled in it and some seaweed sprinkled in it, has some thyme and parsley. So I took something that would have had very little nutritional value to it, would have been very high in starches, and now it's jam-packed with tons of micronutrients. These are dandelion muffins. So I just took a basic muffin recipe, you know, this is maybe zucchini muffins or something like that, and I just diced up a little bit of dandelion and I tossed it in there. It's not much, just a little goes a long way. Over here, I have dandelion in, I believe this is a barley breakfast. I think I just cooked up some barley or some buckwheat. That's what it was buckwheat. And I had thrown in some dandelion flowers and grains. Rice. So all these little green flakes in here are dulse and nettle. So some seaweed and some nettles. And I cooked my rice with a compost broth, which I'll talk more about in a minute. So you're taking a starchy grain, otherwise that would have, you know, just the starches, and now it has micronutrients. So here I'm just taking basic meals and I'm just tossing in, or I'm grating in some things to now add some more micronutrients and more vegetables into it. Here's some nachos I made for my kid this week. So nachos would normally just kind of be some chips and some cheese, right? Maybe, you know, a couple other vegetables. Well, my kid now has, he's got the beans on here, and I cooked the beans and a bunch of wonderful nourishing things. So the beans already have some vegetables and micronutrients in there. But then I have some purple cabbage on here. I have some avocado. I took calendula flowers and I sprinkled calendula flowers on top. So just taking a basic recipe and improving and increasing the amount of nutrients. I found my kid likes salad if I add dried cranberries and chev to it. So if I want him to eat a salad, that's what I do. And we just had to explore some fun dressings for him too. But I can get my kid to eat a whole bowl of salad if I'm putting in some fun things that he really enjoys in with these grains. Here's a smoothie that I made recently that has a ton of microgreens in it. Oh man, it was so delicious. Here are some like little hash brown patties. I took leftover mashed potatoes from the night before, which had a bunch of wonderful seasonings in it, and I grated up some cauliflower and I mixed it up and added a few other things to it, and then fried it up into some little hash patties. And then of course there's fun nut butter balls that you can do too, and you can sneak in some vegetables into those. Let's talk compost broth, because to me, this is one of the, if you had left doing one thing, if you left tonight and you changed one thing, I would encourage you to change, start incorporating compost broths into your diet. When you do your food prep, which we'll be talking more about next week if you'd like to join that event, you just take all your scraps from your vegetables and you make a compost broth. I usually add in some extra onion and garlic for flavor, maybe a little ginger and things like that, and some spices. But you just take any of your scraps that you would otherwise be throwing into the compost pile or just discarding in the trash, and you cook that up. Then I store that broth in the fridge for up to a week, or sometimes I'll freeze them in jars or little small cubes. And then anytime I'm cooking anything that requires water, especially savory meals, like I'm cooking beans, lentils, rice, or other grains, I'm actually substituting that water for this compost broth, and I'm cooking these micronutrients right into our food. Encourage grazing with your children. And I love this idea. So I usually put a platter out and I just kind of, or a little basket out. We also have a little drawer, and I just fill up that drawer every morning I wake up, or that platter when I wake up. And that's what my kid gets to just snack on throughout the day. But I love this idea from Dr. Sears, where he uses a muffin tin. So each muffin tin has a little pile of different types of foods, and you just let that sit on your table and allow your kids to just graze on it when they want to. So the final thing I'd like to leave you guys with is, there's lots of ways to increase the nutrients in our meals, but, we're all busy, we're all juggling a lot, and we have to take every day at a time. And so there are going to be days where we don't have that time. I definitely have days where I don't have that time to make sure that my kid is getting 7 to 13 servings of fruits and vegetables in a day, no matter how much I try. There might be these times. So what I find really comforting for my family is bridging the gap using Juice Plus. And there, because if you think about what I was saying earlier about diversity, getting, trying to aim for 100 different plants in our diet over the course of a year, Juice Plus can really help us out with that, because every day I feel so comforted that my child gets all these foods in every single day. And he is now starting to drink the Juice Plus complete shakes with me too. And so between all this, my son and myself, we're getting about 50 different plants, whole foods in our body every single day. And to me, this is so important, because even with being a healthy cook, I still can't get 50 plants in our bodies every single day, no matter how hard I try. So Juice Plus gives my family the reassurance that we are getting the diversity to support our microbiome and to support all the functions of our body through phytonutrients, through a healthy balance of these healthy carbohydrates from our fruits and vegetables, which also have all the healthy fats and proteins that we need to slow the conversion of these carbohydrates and get the most out of our meals. So we have capsules here, which are good for adults or older children. But what's really amazing is they come in these delicious little gummies for our kids, and my son loves these. There's a children health study, and the person who invited you can fill you in on more information, but I just want to highlight real quick. This is the results of our children's health study that's been around for quite a few, I don't even know how long, it's been around for a long time. But based off 150,000 participants, this is the results of children being in this study. So working with these gummies, the Juice Plus gummies. So after 48 months, look at these wonderful improvements. And then after 1 year. So to me, this is the reassurance that I need for my family to make sure that I'm raising a very healthy son, and that I'm modeling healthy behavior for him too. Is when you look at these wonderful statistics, and who wouldn't want to see the doctor lesson? Who wants our kids drinking more water? Of course we all do. We want to be eating more fruits and vegetables. And like I said, metabolic reprogramming, if we want our kids really craving fruits and vegetables and wanting to eat them, we need to get the fruits and vegetables in their bodies to start restoring the microbiome. But that's the catch-22, right? If they're not eating these fruits and vegetables, or we're having a hard time sneaking them in, we can rely on Juice Plus to start to shift that metabolic reprogramming, to start feeding this healthy flora inside our gut. So that way they start craving fruits and vegetables. And then what we tend to notice oftentimes is our kids over time will start to gravitate more towards fruits and vegetables. And when that metabolic reprogramming is happening. Right now, we want to highlight this wonderful promotion that is happening. The way the Healthy Starts Family program works is when one adult starts off with the red and green, and we get this for free for the children. But we have a special deal happening right now. If you sign up and get yourself or one adult and one of your children started on the family health study, you get one bag of the complete shake mix for free. You just have to pay the $5 shipping and handling. And so this here is a 15 meals serving, which is a $35 value that you get for free if you start your family up on the Healthy Starts family program. And, you know, we just want to always provide all the good nutrition we can for our children. And to me, I think Juice Plus is just a wonderful and easy and affordable way for us to be able to do that. So if you're interested in this, please contact the person who invited you. So I'll go ahead and
Oh my goodness, that was absolutely amazing. Thank you so much, Candice. You know, I have learned so much. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Janae Stevens, and I'm just so glad you joined us here, either on Zoom or Facebook. Candice, you shared some great info, and I know that I'm going to take a lot away from this and apply it to my life, and I hope everybody will too. Let's enhance our well-being and our family's well-being. And Candice spoke about the role of proper nutrition and the importance of eating a wide variety of fruits and vegetables every day. So one option is you can get started with Juice Plus and add more fruits and vegetables to your daily diet. And maybe even try the Tower Garden, which she hasn't mentioned in this one, but you can check it out sometime and grow your own fruits and vegetables. It's all about more fruits and vegetables, right? So if you want more information about it, including the research or the science behind it, please get back with the person who invited you to this call. And if you have a child in your life between the ages of 4 and 18, or an undergraduate under the age of 25, you can take advantage of this wonderful Family Healthy Starts program. I just wish that it was around when my kids were young. And I just want to say, if you're already thinking of someone who might benefit from adding more fruits and vegetables to their daily diet, you can consider enjoying the financial benefits of partnering with us and becoming part of our community, inspiring healthy living around the world. At the very least, it will help you pay for your Juice Plus. And of course, if you want to get in touch with Candice, you can explore more of her services and her offerings at her website, which is herballivingandhealing.com. And I put that in the chat on our Zoom call, and I'll also put it on the Facebook page. And you could follow her recipes and her meals and her inspirations on Facebook and Instagram at Herbal Living and Healing. So we hope that you will join us next week when Candice returns and shares with us about meal planning. And we have an amazing lineup. So I'm just going to share my screen really briefly and show you our lineup here. Okay, so you can see here that we have meal planning for busy families next week. And then on July 29th, baby-led weaning and nursing with Chaya Hagler, who's a certified birth doula and massage therapist, and nutrition for pregnant and nursing moms with Mariah Brown, who is a nurse midwife and co-founder of Beyond the Red Tent. So we have some really wonderful calls lined up, and we will be sharing. This flyer is on our, let me find out where I am now. I'm here. Okay. I'm going to stop sharing. I got a little disoriented here. Okay, stop share. Okay, so anyway, I just wanted to let you know that if you want this flyer, please check in with the person who invited you here. It's also on our Facebook page. So thank you so much. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to stop the recording, which is here. All right, I'm going to stop the recording and I'm going to, yes.